What's up guys, DuArktik here with another Marvel Strike Force video, and in this video we are back to talk about the Secret Defenders. We're gonna take a look at the Secret Defenders infographic, where you can find on my Discord. Link will be in the description. So we are going to break down all the T4s, ISO 8, the best position of this team, and the best game modes where you can take advantage of this amazing team. This is probably the best team of 2023, and there are a lot of reasons why you should invest on this character. So we're gonna break down all the information on this video, and as always, if you like the information on this video, make sure you share it with your friends on Facebook and Discord. If you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe for more Marvel Strike Force content, and make sure you smash that like button like a boss. Okay, so let's get started. First off, we're gonna take a look at some gameplay, because I want you to see the turn order of the team. It's going to be crucial when you're trying to decide which ISO 8 you are going to use on each of the characters. And also we have to remember that this team is very flexible, and it allows you to replace certain characters on different game modes. So that's also going to influence how you set up the ISO 8, so keep an open mind when you talk about it. Before we start, I wanted to show you some gameplay to see what's my thought process behind the choices that we are going to make. And this is specifically based on the ISO 8. I prefer to use Striker on most characters, as you can see, because I like to maximize the bleed damage output, but I could imagine that someone else would use it for a different reason. So I'm going to turn in Wind, Wong, Agatha, and Morgan Le Fay. With Black Cat, you could use it as a Striker or as a Skirmisher. Striker is good because you are doing more turning winds and more bleeds. Skirmisher would be nice because you are making sure that you apply the stuns to the enemy. So here we go, we're going to use the ultimate of Black Cat on Morgan Le Fay. And also because she goes so early, you might not have the vulnerability on the characters you want. So here we can apply ability block to Wong or the ability block to Agatha. Not really necessary, to be honest, so we're gonna do that. The ISO 8 attack of Ghost Rider, while it applies bleeds, it does not blind the targets, which is a little bit strange. So it's a little bit, it depends on how you want to maximize your damage with this team. You can go Striker or Raider for Robbie Reyes, and that will give you more vulnerabilities, but I'm not even sure if you have the opportunity to use those vulnerabilities. Okay, so with Doctor Strange, you're going to apply some more vulnerabilities. Now with the Ghost Rider, I like to use him as a Striker, once again, not only for the bleeds, but the ultimate will also do more drain, and that's convenient to making sure that he is alive. So right now, I don't even need his ultimate. You could use it, or you could just use the basic, and you'll see that, unfortunately, is not giving the speed bar as it should. It's a little bit strange. Okay, so once again, with Black Cat, we can also transfer negative effects and vulnerabilities to the enemies. So even as a Striker, she can apply vulnerabilities to the enemies as long as she has vulnerabilities on herself. That's why it's somewhat nice to have her next to the tank. So let's turn rewind the enemies and apply negative effects. So there we go, they got destroyed. And yeah, I mean, the problem is that we do so much damage, it's very hard to making sure that every character has vulnerability on them. Could you put Raider on everyone and maybe benefit out of that? Yeah, sure, maybe. But I'm not even sure if it will be the case. Okay, let's apply offense up to the entire team. Now we can use the ultimate. There you go, tons of damage, tons of bleeds, and also drain on him. Now everyone dies, and that's pretty much it. So while you can optimize the ISO 8 for applying more vulnerabilities and so on, I'm not even sure if in most cases it will be necessary, because the enemies, they just die so fast. Okay, so now let's take a look at another example of the Secret Defenders in action and see the turn order of these characters. One of the biggest problems is that both Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider and the Black Cat are extremely fast, and because of all the turning line, the speed bar that they get, you might indeed not have enough time to apply vulnerabilities, but it's something that will be very hard to fix even if you try it, because yeah, it just does so much damage. So we have this problem. Miss Marvel goes so fast that even characters that taunt early on, like Strife, they are just not able to do it. So Black Cat goes and destroys. Sometimes the target you want to stun is not the target that you want to turn rewind, so we have some problems there as well. So you can see that I had the isolate attack or I had a vulnerability to use with the Robbie Race. And I would also have that same vulnerability to use with Photon. Unfortunately, the guy died. Either way, let's continue. So Photon, she would use that first vulnerability. And now Doctor Strange is going to apply another vulnerability. And now we can use that vulnerability with Black Cat. Or we can use her ultimate to transfer any vulnerabilities from herself to other characters on the field. So let's imagine we are applying vulnerability to this Namor here in the corner. And you can see that we have one additional vulnerability on one Namor, and we have another additional vulnerability on another Namor to use with Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider. So even if you have 3 strikers on this team, you can still use it if you have a Black Cat next to Miss Marvel Light. So you can see we use that vulnerability on the Namor on the left, and we still have the one on the right. So let's use the one on the right now. We still have 1 charge on each, and now once again we are applying vulnerability again. So if you are using these characters as strikers, you are not going to have any problem. The problem is just the enemy is dying way too fast that you cannot even catch up to it. Okay, so now that we saw this team in action, let's take a look at all the T4s that you need for this team. We have different colors on the T4s. The orange ones means that they are good in all the game modes. Purple, it's Cosmic Crucible. Red, it's Alliance Wars. Green, it's Raids. And if you see a T4 grayed out like this is a T4 that will be useful in a game mode, but throughout time it will lose a lot of value because that character will no longer be required on that specific game mode. So it's pretty much T4s that will be good for the next 6 months or so, but then will die off. But it's pretty much only T4s for Arena. So we could even say that the gray is T4s for Arena. Okay, so with that said, you can see that right away this team does not require a lot of T4s. We have a couple of T4s on Black Cat, on Ghost Rider, and also on Photon. And once again we have T4s that depend on the game mode. We have a Black Cat with some nice T4s for Alliance Wars, and the same goes for Photon and Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider. Okay, so let's take a look at the T4s for Black Cat. Black Cat, she also has empowered abilities that go beyond the level 7, but they are not available right now, and they are only useful in Arena, which once again might lose their value throughout time rather quickly. Either way, with the first T4 on her basic, she's going to do more piercing damage, more bleeds. Whenever you have a ability that applies bleed, you actually want to maximize it so the bleed multiplier is higher. Instead of 125, it's 155. So it will be a little bit significant more damage, but that will depend on the isolate that you decide for Black Cat. If you have Black Cat as a skirmisher, this is a T4 that you can skip. If you have Black Cat as a striker, this is a T4 that you should consider doing it. Okay, so with the special, we have, when you apply the T4, you apply Trauma and apply 2 charges for all Secret Defenders. This is extremely important, not only for the Trauma alone would be a must-have T4, but giving these additional charges to the Secret Defender allies, it's massive, as they give a lot of bonuses for the team, like healing, bonuses, effects, and also speed bar. Then we have the Ultimate. And the Ultimate is a T4 that right now can be somewhat useful because you are using Black Cat in Arena, but as soon as she is no longer part of the Arena meta, the value of this T4 will die down. So this is something that you have to consider. You could eventually skip this T4. It also does not apply bleeds, so it's not super relevant if you're not gonna use her at the end game in Arena, so keep that in mind. Finally, we have the passive, and this passive is useful right now only for Alliance Wars, and this is when you are facing Gamma or any other characters with speed up, like Spider-Man 2099. So if you are not thinking about using Black Cat in Alliance Wars or in specific Cosmic Crucible matches where you are facing Spider-Man 2099 on defense, which is rare right now. This is definitely another T4 that you can skip. So the only ones that really matter is the special and the basic if you ever with the Striker ISO 8. Okay, let's move on to Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange is a character that you can skip most of the T4s. It's not that they are like absolute trash, but they are not super important. So with the basic you do a little bit more piercing damage. It doesn't have a lot of base damage, so it doesn't really matter. The offense down for 2 turns can be useful, but as we have seen, this team does so much damage that it's pretty much meaningless. You ended up using it on game modes like Dark Dimension. Then we have the Whims of Tomb. When you do the T4 on this ability, you do more piercing damage, and you have a 100% chance up from 90 to flip positive effects for negative effects on the enemies. It will calculate these 90% for each of the buffs, so it's not like other abilities that always flips. So with this in mind, this T4 might be somewhat decent, but it's definitely not a must-have, especially because many people replace Doctor Strange on this team. Then we have the Ultimate. I would say this is a must-have T4 if you are using these characters in Dark Dimension. If you have Doctor Strange and Photon, then you should use this character because it can revive Photon and another character, which is decent. But if you are not using him in Dark Dimension 6, this is definitely a T4 that you can skip. Finally, you have the passive for Doctor Strange. When an enemy gets positive effects, he gains deflects, but this requires you to have 2 or more Secret Defender or Supernatural allies, which is not always the case. If it was one ally, it would be a great T4, but because it's 2 or more, then it limits the value that you can use in game modes like Dark Dimension, which would be the best place where to use this T4, and it's quite unfortunate. So this is another T4 that it's nice if you have 2 or more allies, but if you don't, this is definitely another one that you can skip. So I would say for most people, you'd skip all the T4s on Doctor Strange, even if you have him at 7 red stars. Okay, now on Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, because he applies a lot of bleeds, there are a lot of T4s that we should consider. If you are using Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider as a skirmisher or as a raider, you can always skip the T4 on the basic because you are not going to apply those additional bleeds. Even that, because he does chain attack, you can apply bleeds to multiple targets. So it's something that you have to decide based on how often you use his basic attack. Because I use him as a striker and because I like to use the basic more often than the special and the ultimate, because sometimes you don't have to use the ultimate, then this is a very important T4 for me. It's a 3 out of 5, but for other people might not be the case, might be a 2 or a 1 out of 5. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the special. The special is a T4 that you can skip. You get more piercing damage. It does not apply bleeds, so you don't have increase in multiplier when you T4 this ability. And then we have immunity for 2 turns rather than just 1 turn. In most cases, it's not super important. In Arena, it's kinda convenient to have this T4 right now. In other game modes, not really, because the enemies, they just die way too fast when they face this team. Then we have the ultimate. As I said, if you have an ability that applies bleeds, you kind of want to maximize it always. And this ability, when you T4, goes from applying 2 bleeds to applying 3 bleeds. So that's going to be super important. On top of that, we also have more piercing damage to all enemies. And in case you are using this character in Arena, it will also apply trauma. But this is another situation that it will lose value as we move towards a new meta in Arena. But at least for now, it's somewhat usable for most people. I would say probably 95% of the people. And finally, we have the passive. And for the passive, when you do the T4, you lower the resistance of all bio enemies by 100% and lower the counterattack chance of all bio enemies by 100% if they have immunity. This is another counter against Red Hulk and the Gamma team. They spawn with a lot of resistance and counterattack chance and so on. So this is how you can counter them by doing this T4. If you're not using this team on Alliance Wars, once again, it doesn't even matter. Some people say this is to counter Super Skrull. It's not, because Super Skrull does not do counter attacks. Either way, it doesn't matter. This is designed for Gamma counters. And for most people, this is a T4 that you can skip. So for Robbie Ray's Ghost Riders, the only ones that really matter is the ultimate and the basic if you have him as a striker. Let's move on to Miss Marvel Hard Light. And she's a skirmisher. She goes first. She's a skirmisher. That's pretty much it. Now, she doesn't do counterattacks, which is inconvenient. So her basic attack is something that you can skip. She doesn't do any special effects. She gets barrier. It's not super important, so forget about the basic T4. The special T4 clears all barrier and also gives safeguard in arena. So while she is part of the meta in arena, that's fine. The problem with this T4 is that she doesn't last that long, or she's stunned and she's not able to do this T4. So in my opinion, the special is a T4 that you should skip, because most of the times she will not be alive, or she will not be able to do the special because she's stunned, or something else worse than stunned, dead. Okay, so let's move on to the ultimate. The ultimate is a T4 that you want to do because she goes first and she's alive. So because she's alive, she's able to apply the safeguard for herself. If you are watching this in the future and she's no longer arena meta, then yeah, this is a T4 that you can also skip, because the bonuses that you have, the safeguards, are only for arena. And finally, we have the passive. The passive is absolutely must have. Not only she gets more barrier on spawn, she also gets more armor for herself and for the entire team, which will reduce the damage of the enemies. And in arena, she gains 50% more max health, which once again, it will lose value throughout time, but the armor and the extra barrier on spawn is significant enough to do this T4 even in the future. Okay, so for Miss Marvel Hard Light, once again, you can do the passive and you can do the ultimate for now, even that will diminish in value in the future. And finally, we have Photon. Photon, she can be used on the Secret Defenders, but she can also be used with A-Force, and she's quite formidable in both of the teams. With the T4 on the basic, she's going to clear more positive effects on the enemies. She's going to do more single target damage, but it's normal damage, not piercing damage, and the multiplier is not super big. So, and even if you have her as a striker, it's not super convenient to do additional damage with her basic. It's just unnecessary, so this is definitely a T4 that you can skip. Then we have the special on war offense. So if you care about Alliance Wars, this is going to be a very important T4, because she's going to heal up the Secret Defenders and A-Force allies by 30%. This is massive. She has a lot of health. She gets a lot of health bonuses with the Secret Defenders and also with A-Force. So this 30% is going to be a massive heal to your team. Then we have the ultimate. The ultimate increases damage on all enemies and applies defense up and speed up for 2 turns. This is quite great with the Secret Defenders, but this is even better with the A-Force. So if you care about Alliance Wars, this is another T4 that you should do, as it's so impactful having these 2 turns of speed up. And finally, we have the passive that gives 30% more damage to herself and to Secret Defenders in arena. As we mentioned before, because it's an arena-specific bonus, and because these characters lose a lot of value quite fast in arena as the meta changes and more characters are released, this is a T4 that, sure, it might be nice for a couple of weeks, but after that, it's game over. So I would recommend for most people to actually don't do this T4 for Photon, unless you think you're going to use these characters for a very long time, maybe for the next 3 months until we get the next legendary. But if you are very much at the end game and you are close to obtaining Big Apocalypse or Super Scroll, this is definitely something that you should consider skipping in the near future. So in conclusion, for Photon, you should definitely use the ultimate and the special. You can skip the basic and the passive. So that's all in terms of the T4s for the Secret Defenders. Now, once again, in terms of the ISO weight, we can talk about generic situations. Because of the counterattack chance of Black Cat, you can use it as a skirmisher, but you can also use it as a striker to do more turning winds and more bleeds that will speed up and reduce the speed bar of the enemies and increase the speed bar of herself, and also Robbie Reyes, Ghost Rider. With Doctor Strange, you can use him as a healer or as a skirmisher, depending on the game mode. If you are playing on Alliance Wars or Cosmic Crucible, skirmisher is fine. If you are using him on Dark Dimension, healer is probably the best option. With Robbie Reyes, you can use him as a striker, as a skirmisher, as a raider, whichever you prefer. My favorite, because he has a lot of focus, is the striker, and making sure that he does as much damage as possible, because I think that's going to be the most important role for him. For Miss Marvel at Light, my only option is skirmisher, because she goes first and she goes fast enough to apply more vulnerabilities. Some people use her as a fortifier. That's okay. I don't think it's the best option, because she does not do a lot of counterattacks, so you cannot use the drain. The defense up, she already gives defense up to herself. Photon also gives defense up to herself, so fortify is definitely the second option, but the worst option of them all. Even healer would probably be better. I would say skirmisher, then healer, then fortifier, then whatever else. And finally, we have Photon. In my opinion, the only option for Photon is striker, but I've seen some people using her as a skirmisher, which I don't think she has a problem with focus, but maybe depending on the meta, if you are doing a lot of punch-ups, it's going to be significant. Okay, now in terms of the uniques, Black Cat uses Lumium, which is used by a lot of old characters from 2 years ago, so not super important. Doctor Strange uses Palladium, which is quite problematic. We have Black Order rework soon. We have a few of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse characters requiring Palladium, so be careful with that. Miasma, it's always a problem with Miasma. A lot of good characters require Miasma. Then we have Prometheum for Miss Marvel Hard Light. This one is quite easy to come around. And then we have Molecular Cloth for Photon, and this one is very on demand right now. We have Captain Carter, we have Shang-Chi, we have Photon, we have a bunch of other characters that require it, Spider-Man 2099 for example. So this one might be one that you might want to keep your eyes on, because it's going to be on high demand. So I'll definitely make sure that you started farming those miasmas and the molecular clots. In terms of red stars, you want to make sure that Black Cat has as many red stars as you can, 7 if you can afford it. Doctor Strange, the red stars on him are not super important, so forget about that. And in terms of the other characters, for different reasons, you should get also 6 or 7 red stars on them. Robbie Reyes, because he does more damage and more drain. Miss Marvel Light, because she does more healing and more barrier for herself, and because she's a tank and she gets slapped in the face, so it's convenient. And with Photon, she applies negative effects, she heals up her team, she does tons and tons of damage, so it's going to be convenient for you to have as many red stars as possible. So the position of the team is going to be Miss Marvel Hard Light, Black Cat for the counter attacks, and then Doctor Strange because he gives deflect to himself, Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider because he gives drain to himself, and the character with the least survivability is the one that we're going to keep far away from the tank, and it's Photon. We have Miss Marvel Light and Black Cat because of the counterattack situation, so even if there are some kind of chain attacks, Black Cat will stop those chain attacks from happening. Okay, so as you can see, this team in terms of game modes, they are pretty much good in all the game modes. They are quite amazing. They are super flexible in Blitz. You can use these characters separated in 4 different teams and that they are going to be amazing. They are good for most part in Arena, depends on where you are in the meta. If you are a new player, these are probably going to be the best characters you can use. If you are not as much. In raids, you can use them in raids. The problem with using them in raids is that you are going to compromise your other teams that you have available. So it's something that you should skip at all, so don't even bother with it. With Dark Dimension, these characters are all very good for Dark Dimension, so yes, you should take all of them to Gear Tier 18 because they are going to give you extreme benefits on different sections of that game mode. And in terms of Alliance Wars, Avengers Tower and Cosmic Crucible, they are going to be extremely strong, except Doctor Strange. He has less viability, for example in Cosmic Crucible. In Alliance Wars it's fine. In Cosmic Crucible, not so much, because the meta of Cosmic Crucible can be a lot faster than the meta in Alliance Wars, so the value will be diminished, but overall the team is quite amazing in each of these game modes. Okay guys, so this is going to be the ISO weight recommendations, T4s position for the secret defenders. This is based on my experience at the end game, using this team daily in Cosmic Crucible, in Alliance Wars, in Arena, and making sure that I have the full experience of these characters. But remember that at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide how you want to play with these characters. Like I said, there are a few options out there: Photon, Skirmisher, Robbie Reyes, Raider. It really depends on what you want to do with your characters, and make sure that you adapt your isolate choices based on your playstyle. In terms of T4s, I don't think there is a lot of debate, but isolate choices, once again, it's all about your playstyle. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to smash that like button, and if you found the video helpful, make sure to share it with your friends on Facebook and Discord. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe for more Marvel Strike Force content, and I will catch you guys later.